Good evening, everybody. Welcome to ThatGameDragon Conversations. This is our first episode ever. We have an amazing panel lined up for all of you today. I've brought some of the best minds to talk about a very, very hot topic, which is Mortal Kombat. And not just Mortal Kombat as a franchise, but Mortal Kombat now and Mortal Kombat then. There's a lot of conversation going around about which one is actually better. And so, you know what? We're going to dive in with our panel and figure out for you, or at least give you some ideas of which one you should stick with. So choose your sides. But before we go into introducing our panel, I have a very special person that reached out and gave us a shout out, and I want to show them first.
Get over here. Hi, I'm martial art master Daniel Pacina. You know me as the OG Scorpion, Johnny Cage, Sub-Zero, Reptile, Smoke, Noob Saibot. You're tuning in to That Game Dragon. Everything in the video game culture right here, right now. Flawless victory. If you don't tune in, you're going to get caged.
All right. Well, that's a hell of a way for us to start this conversation. So let's get right into it. I want to go down through the panel and please introduce yourselves for our guests who may not know you yet, but definitely will be fans after. Let's start at the top with Lazy Bones 2020.
Hi there. My name is Austin Roney. I go by Lazy Bones 2020 and social gaming, all that stuff. Editor-in-chief of Shoryuken.com. If you're not familiar, it's a great big fighting game site. I've been in the gaming industry for about 5 years doing game news, interviews, reviews, all that fun stuff. And I've even written my own video game that I worked on. So that was pretty cool. It's a pleasure to be here. So happy.
All right. Melissa Rose.
Hey, everyone. I'm Melissa Rose. I'm a singer, entertainer, entrepreneur. I guess I'm the captain of my own shit show. So thank you all for having me.
T-Jax.
What's good, everybody? It's your boy T-Jax, straight out of Detroit. I am an OG thrifter and collector. Everything nostalgia.
Catwoman.
My name is Catherine. I go by Cat or Catwoman, and I'm mostly just a collector and gamer, bad gamer.
And then AK from JLS Gaming.
Yeah, so Will LaSalle, AK, as people know me from JLS Gaming. Glad to be here, talk about some Mortal Kombat and be amongst, a great, team, cast, or whatever for this episode.
Awesome. All right, now that we've gotten to know our panel a little bit, they're all so humble. Very, very humble folks here. So, I think once you start hearing about some of their exploits and the things that they get done during their days, you're gonna be like, wow, those are real stars that we got there. So let's start the conversation rewinding back in time, and we're gonna go back a little far to 1991 when a game that had almost previously failed before had started to rampage through arcades, and that game was Street Fighter II. And so I don't know if I would hope everyone remembers Street Fighter. It's one of the most, one of the biggest franchises out there. And so while Street Fighter was earning its title as king of fighting games and it had no competition in sight, corporations were trying to figure out how can we kind of chime in and get some bank like everyone, like Capcom is doing with their Street Fighter franchise. And so one company that decided they wanted to jump into this fray at one point was Midway, and they came up with a little title that we know now as Mortal Kombat. Now, Mortal Kombat came out October 8th, 1992 in arcades, and then hit the home console sector September 13th, 1993 Mortal Monday. Now, there was a lot of hype surrounding this title because it was one of the most controversial titles out there in the video game franchise. But not only that, it was something that brought reality into gaming. Now, they had used digitized characters that seemed very realistic as their fighters. And not only did you have these digitized characters that you could basically associate as real human beings, they were performing these things called fatalities, where they were decapitating, ripping hearts out, pulling out spines, blowing kisses of death. And so this was very new in a market that previously had mascots that were cute little hedgehogs and, fat plumbers. And so this was a very big turn away from that. And not only that, but this was also the time when you had a lot of great action flicks that were hitting the market as well. So, your action stars at that time were Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and we'll touch a little bit more on that a little later. And, Arnold, you had everybody that was kind of creating action movies at these times that would become the hits of nostalgia for today. And so going back to Mortal Monday, this was every kid's dream to get this game in their home and experience it for the first time. And so I'm going to play the segment of the commercial that was actually released for it. And it's crazy because this spawned a whole era of changes in how things were marketed for video games, and where you could actually take those franchises beyond just being a game anymore, but actually moving them into the movie realm. All right. Now, that commercial sparked something amazing. I think that every kid at that point was walking down the hallway screaming Mortal Kombat. It's one of the most known catchphrases when it comes to video games. Outside of that, I think come over here, is one of the things that you hear. And people get it. It's one of those things that people mix it up all the time. Get over here, come over here. Like, you hear all types of variations. And it's even more interesting when you hear in different languages because you're like, well, so that's what that sounds like in French. But that voice, that statement was something that was so powerful. It's lasted for so long. It's been used in the albums that have been released. It's been used in the movie, the original movie. It's been kind of parodied throughout the 30 years. And it is about 30 years since it was actually released. And so I tried to do something very special for us. I actually got the original voice, Kyle Wyatt. He couldn't be here, but he was kind enough to send a video to just talk very briefly about his experience as the Mortal Kombat guy. And this is something that he didn't expect to happen. It was just like, it was a gig for him in New York City. He was an actor. He's an actor comedian, and he got involved, and then it turned into a whirlwind. And so let's hear what he has to say for us.
By the way, my name is Kyle Wyatt, the iconic cry of Mortal Kombat from 29 years ago. You hear it throughout the movies, the DVDs, the games, the Immortals song. And let me tell you something. This thing has run a life of its own almost. It was a while later after I did that gig back in New York, one of my first gigs in New York. And it was years later that I found out that it was being used in all of these different publications and everything. I really wished I was getting a royalty check. But anyway, the fans out there are awesome. The buildup of this thing has been phenomenal. But wanted to give a good shout out to ThatGameDragon. He has got a channel that has got seriously some great content. I hit it this morning and got a chance to look through a bunch of stuff. And if you really want to get into gaming, you want to find some of those fantastic moves, finish him. Get to this guy's channel right here. I hear that you're going to be doing an episode. I guess it's your first episode of Mortal Kombat. Congratulations, man. It's about time. Well, let me tell you something, man. Thank you for reaching out to me. It wouldn't be complete without the Mortal Kombat cry, right? Mortal Kombat! 30 years later.
Wow. And so Kyle he's just an amazing guy. He was kind enough to do that for me. And we had a really great conversation, went back and forth. Now, funny thing about that is that, he doesn't, it's crazy to think that doesn't get any royalties off of any of that. And they've used that over and over and over for 30 years. And so, but he's such a good guy, and he loves his fans. Like, people reach out to him all the time, and they're like, "Can you do it? Can you just do the Mortal Kombat?" And he does it. And he actually does it for charity. Like, he'll do clips for folks, and he'll go to a charity of his choice. So it's pretty awesome. I think it's amazing what he's done. So, all right. Bringing it back, we kind of set the foundation for this conversation, right? We've already established how big a franchise Mortal Kombat is. It was also fantastic because it released on almost every single platform at the time, which is almost unheard of back then. I mean, you had it on everything from Game Boy to Game Gear to SNES to Genesis. It was just, it was crazy that they were able to do so. And they did it all in such a very short time. And they had different development houses take over and handle the operations for the SNES version and for the Sega Genesis version. And so it's interesting because while we had these console wars happening, right, now we had a whole new war that was entering the fray, which was the two camps of Street Fighter fans versus Mortal Kombat fans. And you would hear it all the time. Street Fighter's so fluid and technical. Yes, but Mortal Kombat's so much more realistic because of the way the characters look, and it's adult. And I remember myself walking into this tiny little shop across the street from my school, and they had Street Fighter 2 forever in there, and I used to play almost every day. And they had wheeled it out and brought this Mortal Kombat arcade game in. And I was like, what the hell is this Mortal Kombat thing? Like, it looks kind of lame. And they were blocky and they were moving kind of choppy. And so I wasn't sold on it yet, but there was a guy there and he's playing the game. And we get to the iconic finish him, right? Now, in the Street Fighter, you got used to, hey, you destroyed somebody's life bar, they just kind of fell and that was it, right? Ken, Ryu, whoever you're using, victory, done, right? But you see this finish him screen pop up and everything turns this gray black like it's about to thunderstorm. And I'm waiting and I'm like, what is this? What's going to happen? And I don't know how he knew, but the guy knew, and he knew because he gave me the look. It was like that wink, that half wink, like, you're going to see some awesome shit right now. And I'm like, well, what's happening? And he was Sub-Zero and he put in, the famous combination. And all you see is this hand go, grab the guy. I think he was fighting against Kano. And he just rips his spine out. And I literally almost shit my pants. I saw this. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I have to play now. And of course, he wouldn't tell me how he did it. I had to wait for like a print edition of like Game Pro or Electronic Gaming Monthly or something like a month later to release all the combinations for everybody. But that stuck with me, and it stuck with me throughout my entire life so far. I always remember as one of those moments where I go, wow, like that was just something I never expected to happen. And so I want to pivot us to our actual panel discussion about, let's talk about the first time you played Mortal Kombat and what you felt when you actually played the game for the first time and how it made you feel. And we'll start Lazy Bones with you. And which Mortal Kombat game did you actually start with?
Yeah. So Mortal Kombat's interesting because I definitely started with Street Fighter. When I grew up, my dad's friend gave us his PS1. That was one of my first consoles, and it had Street Fighter Alpha 3 on it. So that's kind of where I started with that. I didn't really understand how to play fighting games until Marvel vs. Capcom 3 came out. So that's a big gap of playing these games and not really understanding what I was doing. But between all that, I played Mortal Kombat, and I'm like, the original trilogy. I'm like, it's a little choppy. It's not as fluid as Street Fighter to my perspective at the time, and the combos were different, and the way you did special moves were different. There were quarter circles in Street Fighter, full circles, but in Mortal Kombat, it was a bunch of back and forward, or down and forward, and things like that, which was simpler, but wasn't something that I wrapped my head around. The real time though that I actually sat down and played Mortal Kombat was Mortal Kombat versus DC, which is I got it as a gift, and I'm like, you know what? Let's see what it's all about. And it was awesome. I thought it was so cool. And the funny part is there weren't fatalities in that one because they weren't going to let DC characters have those things happen to them. But they had these really broken mechanics in it. But as soon as I played that, I got Mortal Kombat 9, and that's when I really dove in and got to experience everything. It was awesome. So I'm towards the more recent trilogy, and I'm trying to hold back my bias with that. But that's where I really came in.
Okay, Melissa, tell us your story.
Okay, so growing up, I was pretty much a tomboy. So, but I always liked violence. That was like my thing: blood, guts, people dying. I'm here for it. So I used to go to the arcade. I used to go to Malibu Grand Prix, if y'all remember that. Or I don't know if that was up north, but it was here down south. And I would go all the time and play with all my guy friends, and I would whoop the shit out of them. And I just liked all the blood. And I felt it was really empowering to be a woman and kick ass. So that was always my thing. As long as it was bloody, I was there.
Nice.
All right, T-Jax, what about you?
This is a great question. It was actually at my local video store in the lower basement. They had a pretty big arcade down there. And there's a couple of fighters, which are like Tekken 3 and Tekken Tag, but they also had Mortal Kombat 3 there. So I used to play a lot of Mortal Kombat 3 growing up. Then I was able to get a Sega Genesis at a garage sale when I was like, 12, 13 years old. And Mortal Kombat 3 was bundled with it for like, $20 type stuff. So I was like, why not just grab that for $20, took it home, and the rest is history, truly. So, yeah.
Kat.
Okay, this isn't going to be super accurate because I was like a child, but my first experience with it was we went to a pizza place and they had one arcade game, and that was Mortal Kombat. And we wanted to play as kids, me, my brother, my sister. And my mom's like, no, let me play. So then she put a quarter in, and I swear she just kept on beating everyone. And she used that quarter for like, I don't know, it felt like 30 minutes. And I'm like, dang, this lady's amazing. She could beat anything at any time. And from then I was like, man, my mom's the best at Mortal Kombat. I need to get better at Mortal Kombat. So then we had to buy the game so we could get better.
All right.
Oops. You're on mute.
There we go. Sorry. AK. Sorry.
All right. I got two quick stories, right? So I'm gonna take like 2 minutes, right? So one is the first time I played it was Mortal Kombat 1, similar to your story, right? Shadow is similar to your story. It, around the corner from my house, they had it, and I'm playing it. I copied the person that did it. I believe the Sub-Zero, it was 4 down forward high punch or something, I think, right? Or one of those variations or whatever. Figured that one out, figured out some of the other ones, and was kicking butt on it. But fast forward to part 3, in the arcade in part 3, there was the Blimpies in town, and this is a cool story. And this also dates the internet, right? So back then, where I would get the codes, you were seeing a magazine, I would get the code before the internet had graphics on IRC chats, right? And stuff like that. So I went on there and somebody released this code that you can do on the Mortal Kombat 3, and it would basically kind of break the machine, and it would have infinite credits So yeah, I'm sitting there probably, I think it was 14, 15 years old at the time at the Blimpies, kicking everybody's butt. And as they're putting quarters in the machine, I'm saying, oh, don't worry, I got money in the machine, taking their quarters. So not only am I staying on the machine, but I probably went home with like 20 bucks in quarters, right, in my pant pockets that day. But you could only do the code once. And I think the next time I tried it or whatever like that, I got kicked out of the Blimpies. So those are my two stories.
So it's interesting. We talked about a lot of different things, and not just the violence, right? But Melissa, you brought up how it was empowering, and they had such an amazing cast of characters, right? Like Sonya Blade was just kick ass. I mean, she was this U.S. government, operative, right? And she was like, I'm gonna get Kano, and I'm gonna kill him, and that was the thing, right? You never expected to see at that time female characters take a role where they were not only kind of the top tier, right, and showcased as part of the top tier fighters, but also with a level of extreme violence at that point, right? Because Sonya's kiss of death was one of the things where you're like, oh, it's going to be lame, and then the freaking person blows up on fire and you're like, holy crap, what the hell just happened here, right? And so it was one of those things where when you think about in Street Fighter, right, you had Chun-Li, and everybody loved Chun. I used to main with Chun-Li too, but she was always like really I want to say like over sexualized, right? Like it was this weird medium where like yeah, she was this great fighter, but I felt like if it wasn't for the fans pushing her forward, she wouldn't have gotten the showcases that she deserved. And, they started evolving her over time. I felt like Sonya Blade, when she came in, she was amazing. And then Mortal Kombat 2, you had Katana, right? And you had Melina, and they were all very strong, very well-liked characters, very prominent in the franchise. And then, so you had this level where you had all these characters that came from all these awesome backgrounds. They were very different, right? In my opinion, I felt, from as a player, like I could pick any of the genders and they were all awesome. It wasn't like, all right, we're going to throw and sprinkle like a female character here and she's just going to kind of fill a spot, right? Or we're going to throw in a minority character there and they're going to fill a spot, right? Like I felt like they were all very well thought out for the time, where when you looked at Street Fighter, people often complained that it was, it was a little racist, right? All the depictions of the characters, like it was a lot of stereotypes brought to the forefront, right? Like we joke about it, it was a game, right? It was but it was exaggerated, right? Where I felt like Mortal Kombat, like, hey, we had this swath of characters from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different genders, and they were all kind of basically awesome and powerful in their own right. And you wanted to explore all their different moves, right? And I don't think outside of the later editions, every one of the fatalities to me was awesome at that point, right? Like you want to see every one of them. And this sparked something very different in the universe that caused the creation of the ESRB, right? Because parents would come home and, at the arcades, it was different. They weren't really paying attention at the arcades, but now these games were at home. And so if you had the SNES version, okay, it was a little toned down. You had you had the white paint for sweat and you had the lame fatalities. But if your kid had the Genesis version and they popped in that code, your dad, your mom walked by and they saw you rip somebody's head off and they're like, what the hell is this? And a lot of parents were not only offended, but were mind boggled that this was something available for children, right? Anyone could go into a store and pick something like this up. And it wasn't just violence, it was excessive violence. I mean, yes, it was all fantasy. It would never happen in real life, but it was stuff that like you wouldn't even see in your average movie half the time, right? Even the rated R movies weren't doing some of the things that Mortal Kombat was doing. At least they pan away from the scene, right? And you had to figure it out on your own what happened. Like this was in your face. And then if you were like me, you were doing fatality after fatality after fatality over and over again, and all your parents would hear is finish him, finish her, and then some massive death scene. And so, politicians got involved, and there was a lot of back and forth. Nintendo took a certain stance in the beginning, right? They're like, well, we are House Mario, and we are about family systems and family games, and so our Mortal Kombat was a lot cleaner, as you can see. Go blame those Sega guys and those Midway guys, because we have standards, right? And so this board came up, the ESRB, to start kind of putting age gaps or age gates, excuse me, for games, right? And all games had to go through this process of getting a stamp and letting you know, like, hey, this is for 13-year-olds, this is for 17-year-olds, and here's what you're going to see: nudity, violence, sex, blah, blah, blah. So let's take a second there, and I kind of want to get, and I don't want to get too political, but I want to get, your opinions as players. Like, do you think that this was something that parents really needed to worry about? I mean, I know I played all these games and I came out fine, but, was it, because it was a horse and pony show for the public, right? And there was a lot of airtime given to this. It's interesting because you turn on the news and you'd hear about, a war that's happening, right? And then also here in New York or here in DC, representatives are discussing what's going to happen in gaming, and our children need to be protected. And so, Lazy Bones, I'll start with you. Like, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think when you are a new form of media, like games at this time, just like with movies and comic books and with music, you either self-regulate or the government steps in. So the need for gaming to come in, I feel like the SRB does a great job of, letting people know, hey, these are the things that are in these games. And I think that's totally fine. Now, do I feel like witnessing or participating in certain media changes who you are inherently as a person? The millions upon millions of copies of Mortal Kombat and like Call of Duty and all those things that are sold to regular folks, I think proves that most people are pretty chill who play these things. But just in terms of like letting you know what's in this stuff, I think that's totally fine. Now, the fact that it's not always, I've been to a store where someone's reading off the store clerk to the parent, okay, this is Grand Theft Auto, this is rated M for all these things, and their 10-year-old's just like at the counter, like really excited to get it, and they're like, are you cool with that? And they're like, yeah. And it's like, it's out of your hands at that point, to where the ESRBs, they did their job. Then it's just up to whatever ends up happening after that. So I definitely think that it serves its purpose. But I don't think, in a sense, for just to let you know what you're getting yourself into whenever you're picking up a game, to be like, okay, this is for this audience. Like Halo, they dropped to a T because they wanted to get a broader market, because so many younger people were playing it anyway. So it kind of also helps with the marketing standpoint of it too. Can go on forever, but that's I'm pro it, but I don't think that it in itself, by playing Mortal Kombat, you become desensitized or a more violent person on those ends. It's just it's kooky, cartoony stuff.
Melissa, what do you think?
I agree with what he was saying. I mean, you should know what you're getting into, but at the end of the day, for me, when I was growing up, the internet and the video games and the music and everything that was going on, my parents were well aware of what I was doing. I think I came out okay, and I've watched some pretty crazy things, especially when the internet was, starting to be the buzz. I probably saw crazier things on the chats in the AOL chat rooms than I probably did, with the video games and all of the, the entertainment. But I just feel that it's more of a parent's job to watch what their children are doing. It's really not the responsibility of the entertainment industry to parent your kids. So if your kids are out there in the street being ridiculous, that's on you. Like I feel like that's on the parent. And I hate that. I mean, for music, for me, I can speak personally. People, when I do things about mental health awareness or drug addiction, and I put out a video, people are like, why would you do that? Like, you look like you're a druggie. And I'm like, no, that's not why I did it. I did it because I'm raising awareness about these issues. Or if I do something that's themed about serial killers, which I did a video, about being a serial killer, and the things that how it works, how they're finding their victims and things like that. And it was like a social media thing where you're finding people and you're preying on them. People are like, why would you do that? You're glorifying serial killers. No, I'm not. This is like facts, people. This is what's happening today. Like in your home, there are kids being preyed upon, and you act like, oh, well, it's the internet's fault. No, you didn't get in there and watch your kid. Like if I'm looking at something, you trust me, my parents are going through the history being like, what is this? Like, what are cream pies? I'm like, whoa, like, like you're a kid, so you're looking up crazy stuff. I'm just calling it like it is. But I don't know. I could talk about that forever because people have given me so much shit about the things that I've done, and it's like, you know what? I'm bringing awareness. So I don't know. I'm off my
AK, what are your thoughts, AK?
No,
Mortal Kombat making killers out there?
No, I love what Melissa said because it ties into and what Lazy Bones has said, because the way I see what they were saying is they're describing art as a whole, right? So whether you're talking about music, whether you're talking about artistic expression in comic books, or fine art, right? I mean, and all this stuff. So it ends up being where you can't just police it, but you let people know what they're getting into, right? And then whether they decide to or not. But it's definitely not creating, killers and everything like that, that kind of stuff, right? These are things where, and it's not this drug which is a trope in a lot of movies where this brings out what was already in you, so to speak. I don't think comic books, music, these are just forms of expression. And I love what Melissa said because it brings awareness. So that's the art aspect. That's why I was nodding so feverishly when she was talking, because that's the thing where you want to bring awareness to this issue, to mental health, which is really one of the problems. There's so many people. I'm a big boxing fan too. And a long time ago, there was a guy that had a mental breakdown in the ring, Oliver McCall versus Lennox Lewis. And they did things where they said, oh, he was weak or this. And it's like his mom had just passed away, right? And he looked in the stands, saw Lennox Lewis's mom in the stands, right, cheering her son on, right? And remember, he knocked this guy out before, and he broke down in tears in the ring and had a nervous breakdown. And I think now we're becoming more aware of these kind of things with mental health and the awareness and all that stuff. So art has always been that expression. And now, I got the grays and everything like that, but now I look at it as like being Mr. Wilson or being the old guy now saying, get off my lawn. But I don't feel that way because I grew up in that era where we're describing, right? I always sat there and said, I don't need somebody telling me what video game to play. I'm not going to sit there and try to rip somebody's heart out because I'm playing Mortal Kombat, right? So I don't do that to my kids. So,
Kat, what are your thoughts?
I think it was a good call putting the ratings on there, mostly because parents, even now, a lot of people think that video games are just for kids. So saying, hey, this is not a child's video game, don't buy it for your kid, is a pretty standard thing. And then people that sell video games, they can only do so much. And like if you're selling a rated M game to a 10-year-old and their parent's not there, of course you're going to be like, hey, no, I can't do this. But if the parent says, yeah, it lies on the parent. And also the intelligence of a person. If you think that you can, cause a fatality to a person, just like one of your friends, you're going to just do dumb things anyway. You can't stop people from being dumb. And you can't stop parents from being bad parents. So it's not video games' fault. It's just either bad parenting or dumb people.
Mm-hmm.
And the crazy thing is that out of all these years, and I'll have to lean on you guys to keep me honest, I have not heard once some kid trying to perform a fatality on somebody. I've heard a lot of other things, but I've never heard, like in today's news, child tries to rip his friend's spine out his back and attach with his head. Never heard it. So, it's one of those things where, I think everyone so far is right, where you police what your kids do. You have to be the person to tell them what's right and wrong. And if you're absentee, then you can't really be upset at, how they turn out. Because it's more than just the media that they're watching, right? It's the fact that you're not there as a parent. T-Jax, what do you think, man?
I I personally think that the game was taking a big risk with what they were doing, and they were setting a trend. They were the first people to really start with the label and everything with M and all that type stuff. So I feel like that as a parent who was buying that game for that child at the time, yeah, you need to have that label on there for them. But at the time, none of that stuff was happening. 25 plus years ago, there wasn't a lot of awareness on all that for that child at the time. So I really do appreciate that they have the label and all that stuff on there for the parent who was buying the game for the child. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Okay. Now it's interesting because we went from blocky characters, right, where it really didn't feel realistic to over the years. Now, when we're in 2021, the technology is so advanced, right, that when you look at the games now, they're even gorier than ever, right? And Mortal Kombat has definitely evolved in that sense, where fatalities started off a lot simpler and they've gotten more complex over time. And as you moved into the later trilogy, the 9, the 10, and 11, there's been an evolution. And so just to remind everyone where we started and where we are now, I kind of put together something for us in our retro rewind to showcase where we were then. And since we're in 2021 and Sub-Zero and Scorpion seem to be the characters of choice in their epic war against one another, this will hopefully resonate with everyone. So I think we've definitely evolved from Mortal Kombat 1 to Mortal Kombat 11 now. And thinking about that spine rip, it's been something that almost every version in some way or form, along with Scorpion and his Hellfire burning folks to crisps in some variation, right? And so it's crazy to think that anyone would even attempt one of those. I don't know how I'd be able to do any of that to anybody, even my worst enemy. And believe me, I have a few in a list I'd love to perform a fatality on, but we won't get into that. That's a different show for a different time. So let's go back, right? We had Mortal Kombat 1, we had Mortal Kombat 2, we had Mortal Kombat 3. Now it was a successful franchise, right? This thing was everywhere. Every kid, I don't care what they told their parents, secretly they wanted Mortal Kombat if they had a game console. Right? It was that one thing that you went after school and you played with your friends and you laughed at little fatalities. And after that, they even introduced babalities and animalities, right? And so it got crazier and crazier. And in almost a mocking nod to parents that were, a little crazy about the violence, they threw in friendships. And it was the funniest thing, in my opinion, because I think every kid, when they were confronted by their parents, look how violent this is, they could pull out a friendship and be like, no, you see, he's doing something nice for the guy at the end. He doesn't have to finish him. You have an option. You can finish him or give him a hug. Either way, it's good fun. But now this was something that was so powerful in the industry that it started knocking on the theater's doors, right? Somebody needed to make a movie. And if we all have watched video game movies before, we know that they often err on the side of disaster versus the side of being a hit. Mortal Kombat, however, in 1995 was an exception to this rule, not because it was less cheesier than some of the things out there, but because there was great chemistry between the actors. They really enjoyed their roles, and you speak to any one of them, many of them are still friends. There was a passion to keep it as close to possible to the lore, even though some of the actor choices were interesting, especially when you think about Raiden, right? But it was campy, it was fun, it made fun of itself, it knew what it was, and because of that, it was something very special. And to this day, people still go back, look at that movie, and even though Goro is a fun mess to watch, it is still something that invokes laughter and joy. You can watch it and walk away and be like, I enjoyed that. Is it going to win, an award? Probably not, of course. But it was an amazing experience. And now something happened that was a disaster, and we'll call that Mortal Kombat Annihilation or Mortal Kombat 2. And that kind of took all the joy out of the first movie. And this is my opinion, so you can hate me in comments later. I'll just ignore them anyway. But it was something that folks were like, my God, what did they do to the franchise? And it was forgotten for a long time, right? We had an amazing web series that resurrected the idea of a movie called Mortal Kombat Legacy, and it was something on YouTube, and it was a pet project of a few folks, and it was garnering a lot of viewership, and people were really like, hey, this is awesome, like, give us a real movie. And we started getting some traction and then stopped, right? A script was created, it was on hold for a few years, and then finally in the midst of a pandemic, right, we had this announcement that Mortal Kombat the movie, the reboot, is coming out. And everybody's like, what? Mortal Kombat? When and how and what's going on? And then we had the HBO Max release, and then we had some theatrical releases of it, depending on where you were. And so it's interesting to see. It was like put in a time capsule, forgotten for a lot of years, and then all of a sudden it was resurrected. And that obviously had to do with the very, very great success of the new trilogy, right? Mortal Kombat 9, 10, and 11 brought us into the future, right? Our lovable characters that were violent were back again. And they did something very intelligent. And, I don't think they get the credit that they deserve for this, but they brought this concept of bringing in all these cameo characters, right? And you see it done in things like Fortnite, and you see all these other games are doing it all the time now. The idea of bringing these cameo characters from some other franchise is like the thing, right? But Mortal Kombat 9, which is, 10 years old now, right? Had already started this. They brought in Freddy Krueger. They really started. Kratos got brought in on the PlayStation side. Like, it was an epic thing where if you enjoy gaming and seeing your guys kind of come in, and then 10 brought in, our favorite murderers. You had Jason Voorhees, you had Leatherface, you had Predator, Alien. Like, come on. Like, these are things that we used to talk about as kids and say, wouldn't it be awesome if so-and-so fought that person? And all the way to 11, where you have the Joker and Spawn in the same game, along with Terminator and Rambo. What's going on here? But we'll get to that. Let's go to the movies again, and let's take a look at the trailer from 1995 and the trailer from today, so we can see how we've come in this time, right? From all the way then to now.
Each of us, there burns the fury of a warrior. In every generation, a few are chosen to prove it.
One of you three will decide the outcome of the tournament.
Three strangers will travel to the mystical realm of Outworld to defend our people against Shang Tsung. You will die. And his forces of darkness. In an ancient tournament. One more victory.
Your soul is mine.
And our world is theirs.
It has begun.
You can't run from me, Shang!
I don't need to run.
Johnny Cage, Scorpion,
First learned about this 7 years ago on a mission in Brazil to capture a wanted fugitive. The target had superhuman abilities. It had the same dragon marking you do, Cole. I think it's an invitation to fight for something known as Mortal Kombat.
Kill them. I am Sub-Zero. Get over here!
Wow, I'm amped just watching those trailers again. I may have to do a double feature right after this. All right, let's not mince any words any longer. Let's get right to it. Mortal Kombat 1995 versus Mortal Kombat 2021. Let's get your thoughts. What'd you like? What'd you hate? And which is your winner? Lazy Bones.
Okay, so I watched them both last night so that they'd be fresh, and I gotta say that Mortal Kombat 1995 is still a really fun movie to this day. Like it's so campy and cheesy, but like you were saying earlier, it's self-aware of that. Whenever someone says something like "finish him" or "flawless victory," it felt a little organic to that world because everyone spoke like that in that movie. So I'm like, oh, this is fine. Sure, we're in the early days of CG, so some things are pretty rough, especially Reptile. And I mean, I'm sure we've all seen it, right? So Scorpion, he died in an unceremonious way, but Sub-Zero really died in an unceremonious way. Throw the bucket of water at him, and that's it. So, and the coolest characters, from an iconic standpoint, were kind of brought down to a really low level. And then Sonya Blade was really put down to the side towards the end of the movie, which I feel was really awkward to me. And I'm like, what? She's up top with the dogs. And then Shang Tsung's like, yeah, she's going to be a damsel for the last bit of the movie. And I'm like, well, that's not right. That's not cool at all. But still, the cast had great chemistry with one another. It was a lot of fun. Now, I watched 2021 last night, and I didn't watch a whole lot of the trailer, so my expectations weren't super high or low or anywhere. The beginning, fantastic. First 5 minutes, I'm like, this is awesome. This is more accurate to the lore. We're seeing Sub-Zero and Scorpion's fight happening back in the day. And then, like, kind of immediately, once Raiden shows up and you see his eyes, I'm like, oh no, this movie isn't for me. Because it just kind of fell off the rails for me after that, with a lot of the plot and the dialogue and things like that, where it sounded a lot more serious. So when someone just randomly says, all right, get over here, but every other scene, Scorpion speaking Japanese, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So for me personally, I feel like I could still watch the original over and over again. We'll see. I think they said they have more sequels planned. Let's just hope it's not a Annihilation situation for the upcoming Mortal Kombat movies. I think Cole is an interesting enough of an original character that they made for those to where they could do something cool with him. So I'm hopefully optimistic with that. But 1995 for me, it's just fun.
Melissa?
I like both of them. I mean, when I saw that the new one was going to come out, I felt like I was a kid all over again. So I really enjoyed the new one. But let me tell you what really fires me up about the original one is Raiden. I don't like that guy that plays Raiden. Like, I'm sorry, like that dude is horrible. I don't know why we needed to have the Highlander in there, but so I'm going with the new one because I like Raiden in this one because Raiden's my favorite. So I'm gonna have to go with 2021. So,
all right, T-Jax.
You already know how I'm rocking. It is the first one, 1995 for me. When I think of the first movie, that intro just makes my heart drop. That music just starts hitting you. Then you see Shang Tsung pick up Liu Kang's brother and say, "Your soul is mine." Woo! Smashes the ground. Then Liu Kang wakes up out of nowhere with the whole green background and all that sweat. What a great intro. That really brought me in as a viewer. And I like the first one a lot more because they go in a lot more detail about the characters. You know, if you never were a fan of the franchise at all, I would highly recommend watch the first one. You get to see what every character looks like. You get to see some of their moves. And personally, when Sonya Blade just kills Kano with the thighs and just breaks that neck, that is in my head ever since I was a kid. So that's my favorite. And when it comes to the new movie, I did enjoy it. My favorite scenes were Jax, obviously, when he was fighting Sub-Zero the first time and he froze his arms and they just broke. Great visuals in that part. The story was okay, but like I said earlier, if you never saw the movie before and you're not a fan of the franchise, I would highly recommend watching the first one over the new one that just came out.
Okay. Kat.
Okay. The first one has Liu Kang going for him. All his fight scenes are good. His hair is amazing, and all through the movie, bouncy, just full head of hair. And I'm like, this is pretty good. And then everyone else is okay through it. Sonya, I rewatched it like a couple nights ago to refresh myself. Her fight with freaking Kano was so slow, and just I was like, man, she could do better than this. But the theme music, I think that's what got me as a kid, is just that beginning part got me through the entire movie because I was just up here the entire time. There was nothing that would bring me down. I was pumped up. I was punching pillows. I was punching walls. I was ready. I was ready for the rest of the movie. But I like the newer one a lot better. The fight scenes are awesome. Everything was choreographed amazingly. And the only thing is Liu Kang, he was kind of just he looked like a kid compared to everyone else, and they just didn't give him a lot to do. So I was like, come on, give him a little bit more. Let me see his power. Give him fuller hair or something. I don't know.
The dragon, though, that was pretty cool.
That was pretty awesome, but I like the original Liu Kang a lot better.
AK.
So if I had to choose between the two, well, first off, I rewatched both of them again in anticipation, right, for us to discuss this. But I like both of them. My vote right now is going to be for 95 because, like Lazy Bones was saying, it's campy. I love campy. I love what you said earlier, where Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Freddy Krueger was in 9, and then 10 had Jason and Leatherface and all this stuff. So I love that campy stuff, even though it scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. I just love those series. So I love the campiness. The new one, I think, is kicking off the MKCU. Is that a thing? If not, I got to patent it right now. The MKCU. Sub-Zero is signed for 4 movies. So, you know what I'm trying to say? And I heard that HBO Max is going to have a series. So I think the jury's going to be out because I think 10 years from now, we're going to probably look back at it iconically as like Iron Man 1, right? That just kicked everything off. So for right now, my vote's 95. You check with me 10 years from now, and we got 15 movies and, you know, a Captain America and a Winter Soldier or something like that, a buddy film with Scorpion and Sub-Zero, right? And all that stuff, then, you know, I think I'll vote, you know, 2021.
So it's funny for me. If it was just the Sub-Zero Scorpion movie, I would have been okay with it. It lost something in the middle. I feel like they had a massive budget in the beginning. Then we had the pandemic, right? And they're like, so remember when we told you had this much money for your movie? We're going to need to trim that down a little bit. And we're also turning you into a release for HBO Max. So yeah, that budget's a lot smaller now. Because let's face it, Sub-Zero was amazing. Bihan was awesome. I mean, you know, I think he was just, he had my skin like going like this. I had the hair standing up. I had the feels of the 1995 movie. I'm like, this is going to be amazing. The first 10 minutes or so, that interaction between them, that chemistry was so good. And then it just fell apart once we left that world, right? And when we got back to it towards the end, you know, I'm going to say it, I hate Cole as a character. I just get rid of him. I mean, you didn't give me Johnny Cage. Come on. How can you have Mortal Kombat without Johnny Cage? I know they alluded to it for the sequel, but Johnny Cage, man, come on. He needs to be in the movie. So it was really just the Sub-Zero versus Scorpion movie. And then, you know, it turned into an unfair 2 versus 1 battle. And then Goro, come on! He died in a farm near a barn house, I guess. You know, it's insane. Like 1995, it was campy, yes, but it was funny. Like you were okay with Goro dying the way he died because Johnny Cage, you know, basically did the infamous nut punch, right? And then he complained about his $500 glasses. and it was just awesome. And so for me, it's gonna be 1995. Now, one of the things that all of you brought up was the soundtrack. That soundtrack was amazing, right? I got up. I went with like 12 of my friends, and we were all, you know, kids then. And when it came on, we were all like Mortal Kombat, and we were just ready to go. You know, the Immortals did an amazing job pulling that OST together. Believe it or not, it went platinum. You know, it's one of those albums that you really didn't think. You know, OSTs, unless they're part of some type of drama, right? They usually don't do as well, right? They do okay. Especially an OST for a video game, definitely you would expect to hit anywhere near platinum or gold. But it went platinum, and it's one of those songs that everybody hears and it elicits, you know, this reaction, right? There's a little smile. You're like, oh man, that was awesome, and you listen to the whole song. I don't know anybody that's ever skipped that song when it's come up on cue, or they've heard it somewhere else and they're like, I have to hear it one more. And you know, Spotify will come up and they'll just be like, all right, just one time. Why is it not here? Why is it not here? And then you have to listen to the fake versions that have been pushed up, and you're like, this is not the original Immortal song, but it causes that type of effect, and so you know. We are very fortunate, I'd say, to have Melissa Rose with us today because she's actually has been featured on a take of a new rendition of a Mortal Kombat song. And we're going to play a little bit of a promo of that, and then we're going to have her talk about that experience and what it was like to try to come up with lines for something that's so epic. I mean, I would probably fall apart, right? Because I'm like, oh my God, that's too much pressure because Mortal Kombat is just such a huge franchise. I couldn't take it. So let's play the promo and let's hear her thoughts about this. So here we go.
Fatality will snap your neck down and out, you're out of the count. Footwork, blow by blow, when the bell tolls, it's time to go. And we're trying to go, and you're next to go. Don't think you can beat us, cause you'll die slow.
All right. So, Melissa, tell me about this song.
I was approached to do a feature with the theme team, which is Kaz and Bud. I've actually worked with them in the past doing shows, and we've never really got to connect until recently. And they asked me to do it, and I was like, oh my God, perfect. This reminds me of when I was a kid. And I was super excited about being a part of it. I did like a quick crash course on everything so I could come up with, what words to use. And I didn't want to sound like super cheesy. I wanted to be rough and tough and do the song in the movie. It's Just Do. So I was really excited to be a part of it. And then when we did the video, of course, everything that's going on with the COVID, we shot it all individually. And I was a little nervous at first about it because I've done a video before where like we were all in different locations, but it came together so well. So the editing and everything was awesome. I was very, very anxious about seeing it because I was like, oh my God, how is this all going to turn out? Are people really going to like it? Because I know that Mortal Kombat has a huge, fan base and a huge following. And I was like, I hope that we do the movie justice, do our remix justice. So I think it turned out awesome. And I'm really honored to be a part of it. I think we've had great feedback as well. There were some haters, but F them. They're just bored and have nothing better to do with their time.
And I've known Melissa for a while, and I saw this pop up, the video promo pop up before her and I spoke. And, as good friends as we are, I was like, oh, please let it be fantastic, because I don't know how I'm going to tell her she's hurt my franchise. And I was so pleased when I heard it. It's really amazing. And kind of alluding to our next show, Melissa will actually be here when we discuss music and video games and how they influence each other. And she'll be here with the theme team and a few other artists that we're going to bring on the panel to talk about how video game culture impacts the creation of music and influences music, and vice versa, because we've seen music influence video game culture. I mean, one of the more interesting fighting games that we've seen, and there's a weird resurgence of people asking for it to come out, is Def Jam. Right? And this was a fighter that I enjoy. I didn't expect to enjoy it. And it had its own following, and it was a little crazy. And now I'm seeing people creating all types of images, bring Def Jam back. Ed Boon, the co-creator of Mortal Kombat, actually put up a poll. Hey guys, what video game franchise would you like to see make a comeback, next? And it actually beat out like Killer Instinct. And I was shocked because Killer Instinct to me is a huge, huge fighter, right? It's underrated, but it was definitely right there with the rest of the pack, even if it wasn't on the top. And when they did a reboot on Xbox, it was amazing. And so it's just one of those things where, you never know. And I think when we go and look at music, it definitely does have an impact on video game culture and vice versa. You ever played a game and you just turn on the volume and you try to play the game without the music, and you're like, wow, this is terrible. And sometimes that soundtrack will get you through your journey. But anyway, enough about that. Melissa, thank you so much for allowing us to get a little sneak peek of that. On our show on the 29th, we will hopefully play the whole thing for you and everyone that's watching. Let's bring it back, because I'm not going to let you guys get away. You're going to have to pick your favorite game in the Mortal Kombat franchise. Is it the old trilogy? Is it the new trilogy? Who wins? What should our audience do? I'm going to put myself and be a martyr, and I'm going to tell you right now, even though I started with 1, 2, and 3, there were, if it wasn't for the fatalities, if it wasn't for the over-the-top theatrics of the game, it was a bit of a mess, the first one. The second one got better, and the third one definitely improved, but I still always went back to Street Fighter at that point, because it just was much more complex, in my opinion. As a fighter, there was a lot more going on, and you had tons of characters at that point. I mean, thinking about Street Fighter Alpha 3, the roster was just insane. And so even though I loved Mortal Kombat, The fluidity and nimbleness of the Street Fighter franchise always brought me back until Mortal Kombat 9. And when Mortal Kombat 9 came out, it was just so much fun. And I played it on the Vita as well. And I remember going on the go with this thing, and I just flying back and forth. And I was like, I love this game. This is one of my favorite. It always has to follow me everywhere. And then 10 and 11, and they're just so amazing. The production value that they put into the games now, the amount of skins that you can get for your characters, the armor, the crypt, like everything's involved in such a way that it's a wonderful experience. The Towers of Time, I think, are great. Like, you really could play this game almost infinitely at this point. And then if you got a couple of folks in your house, that couch co-op playing against each other, like you can't beat it. And so that was long-winded for me. It is the new series for the trilogy, Mortal Kombat 9, 10, 11, for the movie, Mortal Kombat 1995. Lazy Bones, tell me, what do we got?
So I feel like it's unfair for me to pick between the two because I wasn't super familiar with the original trilogy. So I'd have to say that the newer trilogy is where it's at for me. But I will have to say, picking between those, Mortal Kombat 11 is awesome. 9's what got me in, but 11, if you haven't played 11, at least watch the story mode, because after watching both the movies, I'm like, the story mode in Mortal Kombat is actually fantastic. It's a really good, and the visual fidelity at this point is phenomenal. The voice acting is great. The action scenes are really good. So you can see some pretty cool stuff in those. But what I love 9, but the guest characters for 10 turned me off a bit about it because I wasn't a big horror movie buff. But then, which is funny, I say that, but then Spawn got announced for 11, and then I jumped right in so it's a bit of a double-edged sword. But so newer trilogy for me, 11 is my favorite.
Okay, Melissa.
I like Mortal Kombat 3 because I like all the extra characters, and I wanted to be like Melina and Katana, so I was sold there. And I thought the girls got hotter in 3, so I'm there for it. So.
T-Jax.
I love the first trilogy. The first game, like you said, was a little good job, nice try. But I really did enjoy the third game a lot. The characters looked really beautiful. The colors were just awesome in that game. And Mortal Kombat 11 is such a fun game, a very fast game. I played that on the PS4 with my partner before. But when it comes to me, first trilogy and the 1995 movie for sure.
All right. Catwoman.
I'm going to have to go with the newer ones. The older ones are amazing. And one of the best things about Mortal Kombat is it evolves. Each game is an evolution of the last one. They never stay stagnant. You're not playing the same exact game over and over. Maybe in the middle it got a little stale, but like the newer ones, they've just gone above and beyond for me. I can just play them with someone, and even if I die, at least I die like in a really cool way.
AK, what do we got?
I'm gonna say something like earlier, right, about stories and everything like that. I'm an artist, regardless if it's with music or with gaming, bringing gaming to life, or in IT, bringing things to life. So 1, 2, and 3 are near and dear to me, right? I actually in high school read the book and did a book report on the entire book. So to me, there's story behind it. But like Lazy Bone said, 11, the story mode on 11, and I'm glad that I didn't buy it until it was the complete version. No pun intended. I can't enunciate it with a K, but you know what I'm saying? Until that, but that story mode is phenomenal. And so it's tough for me. I'd say the trilogy, and then I'm hedging my bets here all day, right? But I say my favorite game is 11, right? But then on top of that, with the movies, right? Talking about 95 versus 2021, and what you said earlier about Scorpion versus Sub-Zero, right? Like behind me, that I don't know if it was Anime or whatever, Scorpion's story or whatever that came out like a year ago. That one was pretty cool too. And that's the thing where the backdrop and the story with Quan Chi being involved. That's why I don't know with the new series, the MKCU, right? Again, patent pending or whatever. The MKCU, I don't know if that one, how they're going to interweave that, right? I'm assuming they're going to somehow say that first 5 minutes that all of us love in the 2021 somehow was that Quan Chi really and not Sub-Zero, right? Or was it, influenced by him, etc.? I think, the medallion came up in one of the scenes where Kano stole it, and you don't see it again in the rest of the movie, even though he passed away. So that's what's intriguing to me is the stories, and that's what I like. So I'd say 11, the trilogy, but my favorite probably of all of them is 11, and of the movies, like I said, the original, the 95 one, but I can see this one end up being like Iron Man for the MCU. So again, I'm hedging my bets, man, but there it is.
All right, and for all of you at home, please feel free to drop your opinion on what you think is the better trilogy. Is it 9, 10, and 11 bringing us into the future of what MK can be, or are you nostalgic and you're feeling 1, 2, and 3 are where it's at and you won't let go? Drop us a few comments and let us know. And I want to take the time to thank our wonderful panel. It was an amazing experience. I know we went a little over, but it was a great talk. I'd love to just go to each one of you, let everyone know where they can find you. Your Instagrams, your websites, your YouTubes. We'll start with you, Lazy Bones. Where are you going to be? What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter more time than I should be, probably. My phone lets me know each week for my screen time. You spend X amount of hours on Twitter. I'm like, I should probably be off. But that's where I'm usually at, where you can find me. But then, of course, my gamer tag, LazyBones2020 on any platform. So that's where you can find me.
Right. Alyssa, outside of the studio and recording the next awesome video for a Mortal Kombat soundtrack, where can we find you?
You can find me at mrosemusic.com. I'm also on all social media platforms: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, all under Melissa Rose. And I want to thank y'all so much for having me. It's really an honor. I feel a little like it's so much because I'm not really that big of a gamer. I love Mortal Kombat, and I was like, I'm gonna go because it's Bill and it's Mortal Kombat. So I was a little bashful at first because I was like, I hope I can hang. I was telling Bill, I was like, I hope they know, but I'm not that knowledgeable. But thank y'all so much for having me. I really enjoyed it and giving me a platform to promo myself as well as the theme team. So thank y'all.
All right, T-Jax.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at TJACKS_. And I'm out here on YouTube. I do a whole lot of thrifting and video game reviews, mostly thrifting because I'm out here. And that's just TJax also. So check me out.
And whenever I'm in Detroit, we're going to have to connect. So this way you can tell me where I get some good games at.
Yes, sir. I'm out here everywhere in every little borough. So we will definitely connect. You already know.
Catwoman, where can we find you at?
Mostly just on Instagram. My name is Catwoman92 on there, and you can just see me collect stuff and put pictures up. That's about it.
Please, definitely, if you're on Instagram, go visit Catwoman92. Her stuff is amazing. There are very few pages of folks that'll catch my attention, and she always puts up something interesting and fun. It's always a good time. So definitely check her out. AK.
Yeah, you can. I'm following everybody. So as they were saying, where if I'm not already, I'm following them. So on the personal tip is W LaSalle on the social platforms, WLASSALLE, and for on the gaming side, it's JLS Gaming USA. Right, it's really a team, a family thing. So shout out to the family there. Willow, James, Olivia, they're all sleeping. And my wife, the beautiful Liliana LaSalle. And what we do is where you can catch us in person, right? And you were talking about Detroit and T-Jax. So T-Jax already knows, now that we're getting past this pandemic, right? You can catch us in conferences, right? I'm going to definitely be making my way. That's one of the things, even in my day job as a CIO, I'm always attending the conferences. We're out here in Orlando, right by Disney and everything like that. So you can catch us in person at a lot of these retro gaming conventions, the Midwest Gaming Classic, Long Island, whichever ones are having it in 2021 will be there. but a lot of them have kicked the can down the road to 2022. So come up to us in person. We'll have booths, or we'll be part of roundtables as well.
Okay. And just for everyone else's knowledge, AK and T-Jax and I have collaborated before. We always have a good time. So
Yes,
please
sir.
check out the
Always.
channels, because I think we're going to continue to have these cross collaborations between our shows and have a good time. So if you enjoy the folks that you're looking at and hearing, let me know, because I definitely would continue to bring them back. And thank you everyone for watching our first show. We did it. We got through it. We had a great time. Mortal Kombat. I can't say it like Kyle Wyatt, but that being said, thank you. Have a good night, and we'll see you in our next show, the 29th. Melissa Rose will be there. The Theme Team will be there, and several other artists. It was a good one. Thank you, and good night.